All right. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you guys all for joining us today. Today we're going to be going over how to work aged leads, and specifically we're going to be dialing for dollars. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be an overview of one of the most affordable and doable ways to get into really writing serious business. Aged leads are just what they sound like. They're real-time leads, just they're older now. People go on the internet, they'll fill out a form for a life insurance quote, they'll fill out a form to win a free iPad and think but really that's for a life insurance quote, whatever. And these people get sold as real-time internet leads, and you can find real-time internet lead vendors all around, and 99% of them are owned by the same two big companies these days. And what happens is, those real-time leads are sold, and, they're $8 a pop or $10 a pop or $50 a pop, depending on your filters and how many times they're shared, quote unquote, and how exclusive they are, and that's a joke. And then, 30 days later, when they're no longer real-time leads, they're resold again as aged leads. And you can find them, 30 days old, you can find them 90 days old, you can find them 180 days old. Aged leads are aged however long they are aged. So they're simple as that. They're real-time leads, just later on. And you buy them in bulk at a lower cost. That's where the real benefit of aged leads comes in. So you can get them much, much, much more cheaply than you can real-time leads. Like we were saying a moment ago, you might find shared leads at, from life insurance, 20, 30 bucks a pop. Sometimes exclusive leads are around 50 bucks a pop sometimes, or, even a good bit more for some real-time vendors. Aged leads, you're looking more in the range of 30 or 40 cents a pop, maybe $1 per lead if you've got a lot of filters put on it. So right out of the gates, you can see it's a much more affordable approach to prospecting. You're not having the tremendous outlay per phone call right out of the gates. So your setup to work aged leads is fairly simple. You purchase the leads, like we just mentioned, that they typically run, like we said, around 30 or 40 cents per lead, or I'm sorry, 35 or 40 cents per lead. I think the better deal we have on the site right now is something like 37 cents a lead. And by the way, if you go on the association site, we have 3 aged lead vendors in the member discount section. They're different in terms of the number and types of filters you can put on the lead, and also different in the number of the price of the lead. I want to say that I'd have to look at it, but the lowest cost one we have is something around 35, 37 cents a lead. And if you use our discount code at checkout, you get 25% off whatever your offer is. But that's on the website, and that's kind of beside the point for right now. Point is, obviously, part of working aged leads is going to be purchasing leads. And when you purchase leads, we talked about the fact that they're so much cheaper and you're typically bought in bulk. That's because this is really a numbers game. Whereas, with real-time leads, you're looking to close maybe 1 out of 15, 1 out of 10. I haven't worked real-time leads in a long time because they're such garbage these days, from what I can tell. I know that when I worked them years and years ago, well, back in 2009, 2010, so I guess not really that long ago. They were maybe 1 out of 12, 1 out of 10 was a good ratio. So maybe 1 out of 15, 1 out of 17 or something today. Aged leads, you're looking more like 0.5% to maybe 1.5% closing rate. So if you call 100 leads, 100 aged leads, you might not get a sale. You might get 1 sale. You might look out and get 2 sales. But it's very much a numbers game. There's going to be plenty of times where you have streaks of 100 dials that don't net you anything. One of my favorite stories to tell about how kind of the law of large numbers works out in your favor when you're working leads is from when I first got started selling insurance. I bought a batch of leads, and it was some real-time internet lead vendor that had an offer where you buy 20 leads and you get 20 leads for free. So I bought my 20 and I got my 20. And the first 39 leads, I didn't close anything. It was miserable. I got yelled at and cursed out, and I thought I was incompetent, and it was a harsh learning experience. The 40th lead, when I was very desperate at that point, because I was rapidly going broke, we sat down and managed to close them on a health insurance policy, got a couple of referrals from them, used some of that money to buy another batch of leads, and then leads, number 41, 42, and 43, I closed all of them. And, that was, if you look at just that batch of leads there in a vacuum, that was a streak of several in a row that closed. That was a hot streak. If you look at the other parts of it in a vacuum, there was nothing that closed. It was 0%. So you really have to take a large enough sample to let these percentages work out. When we say you expect to close 0.5% to 1.5% on aged leads, that doesn't mean if you buy 100 leads, you're guaranteed to close one. It doesn't mean if you buy 1,000 leads, you're guaranteed to close between 5 and 15. You might buy 1,000 leads and close nothing, or close 1 or 2. You might buy 1,000 leads and close 20. Who knows? The point is that over time, these are the numbers that you might expect to see. And to get those numbers, you really want to look at getting a dialer as well. Excuse me. Getting a dialer is pretty important. It's hard to hit the type of volume that you're going to want to hit without using a dialer. If I'm manually dialing, if I just have a list of numbers in front of me and I have to enter every one of them, dial them myself, if I really try to crank it out, I can probably hit like 120, maybe 150 in a day. And I mean, that's not a lot. And part of that is because I really hate doing it that way, and I just get burned out. And I think that happens to a lot of people that try to sit down and manually dial day in, day out. If you use a dialer, you're looking at more like 400 or 500 a day on the low end. And it makes the whole thing much more doable. The contact ratio for these leads that you're buying as aged leads are going to be lower than they might be as real-time leads. With real-time leads, they hit a form on the site, their information is sold, you get it within a minute or two. They were looking, and then you contact them. So they're probably in a position to talk, or in a position where they're thinking about it and they're in the mindset to talk about it. With aged leads, you're calling them so far after the fact that you have no way to guarantee that. So if you call an aged lead once or twice, you might miss them both times. If you call them 5, 10, 15 times, you're going to have a much better shot at actually connecting with them. 15 might be a little bit excessive, but you get the point. The process for actually calling and following up on them is a little bit different, a little bit more aggressive than it might be with real-time leads, just because you've got to give yourself more chances to connect with these folks. And again, all that's made much easier by a dialer. We've got a discount with sales dialers that's also listed in the association site in the member discount section. You can take advantage of that too. And the other thing you want to have in place is just a general preparation to sell. If you're dialing aged leads, you probably want to end up selling at least a couple of products along the way. So make sure you have those products ready. If you want to sell specifically non-med term over the phone to aged leads, you should probably be appointed with someone like Fidelity or maybe a Surety. Folks that have good non-med term policies and easy electronic applications that you can do over the phone or online with your client. That's the type of thing you're looking for. It's not to say you want to throw medically underwritten policies out the window. You do want to have those available, and they're actually pretty important to have available. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a bit. But the point is, you want to have these contracts ready. You want to have these applications ready. If you're going to sell somebody on a medically underwritten policy, you want to be able to pull up your paramed vendor and go on and get that set up too. All that good stuff. Just your ducks should be in a row, to the point that if you pick up the phone and the first person you call says, "I don't know who you are, but I hope you're calling to sell me life insurance," you should be ready to write the application right then and there. And ideally, you should also be ready to cross-sell. We'll talk about that in a little more detail in a minute too. But it's nice, to call aged leads with more than one product in your back pocket. Maybe you're specifically interested in selling that non-med term product, like Fidelity or Surety we mentioned a minute ago. But don't let that be the absolute only thing that you're going in armed with. Have a health product in your back pocket, have a critical illness or cancer product, have a long-term care product, have a life insurance product, living benefits like that AIG product we did a webinar about a couple of weeks ago. We'll talk about why that's important in a little more detail later on, but for now, just preparing to sell means if someone picks up the phone and they're ready to buy right then, you should be ready to take that application right then. So like we said, your goals are going to be 0.5% to 1% closing percentage, maybe 1.5% if you're on a real hot streak and you're doing well, but 0.5% to 1% is a good goal. And you also have to have, in addition to a realistic closing percentage, realistic goals for your contact ratios. And we mentioned that a moment ago. Like we said, these folks are not people that are just sitting by their phones right now waiting to talk about life insurance. They didn't just fill out a form and request this quote 30 seconds ago. They might have requested it 30 days ago. And that means that they're probably not sitting by their phone waiting for it to ring anymore. They're probably not checking their email, anxiously waiting to see if somebody sends them a quote right now. So you might miss them a couple of times. Realistically, if you work aged leads versus real-time leads, and you might say on a real-time lead, all right, if I call this person 3 times in a row and they don't answer, I'm giving up. 3 times trying to reach an aged lead is not very much. Typically you're going to run through a list multiple times before you give up on it. And when you say run through it, you'll have a list of aged leads. You'll run through. You'll mark the folks that you're able to contact. You'll mark the folks that are asking that you have in your sales pipeline, and then you'll mark the folks that were uncontacted. Maybe you left a message, maybe you didn't, and then you'll be able to go back through and call them again until eventually you either give up or they've all been contacted. That part won't happen, or whenever you decide to move on to your next list. Point is, you want to have realistic goals for contact ratios. And again, the volume is key. We keep talking about volume because it's very, very, very important here. You really can't buy 100 aged leads and think, I've got a good handle on how this works, and this is going to be a representative sample of what I can do with this type of prospecting. You've got, at a minimum, like 1,000 leads, aged leads is probably the smallest batch you would want to get, in my opinion, and even then, that's pretty small. We mentioned a minute ago with a dialer, running through 400 or 500 numbers a day is not really all that unrealistic, especially with these contact ratios. It means you're going to be running through a lot that are just ringing and then going on to the next number. If you only buy 1,000 aged leads, you've given yourself 2 days of work before you have to start recycling your list all over again. So that just keep in mind. These numbers, 1,000 leads, maybe that sounds like a lot if you're used to the returns you get from direct mail and you're thinking of leads in those terms or in the terms of, the number you might buy in batches of real-time leads. But you got to have a different mindset here. 1,000 leads is a very small, very, very small number of leads to work with this type of prospecting. Really you should be looking at 5,000, 10,000 as an ideal starting point. And again, that's you do what you can afford. And you kind of dip your toes in here and see what you get out of it. But if you want to get an actual representative sample and get a good feel for what working age leads is going to be able to do for you and your business, you got to give that type of volume a chance to work for you. All right. So what do you actually do when you get somebody on the phone and you're working these age leads? How do you get them talking to a life insurance policy? Well, the initial contact. I really like age leads. I've tried them a lot of different ways. This is my favorite method by far, and it's just like a quality survey. You can think of it like that. You're calling to check in on the lead because we all know that when this person who this age lead represents, when this person put in their information and got sold as a real-time lead originally, we all know that their email blew up, that their phone rang off the hook, and they got called by every life insurance agent within 50 miles of them. And they probably didn't enjoy the experience all that much. So we're calling after the dust has settled a little bit just to check in on the lead and see how things are going. And typically we're going to get 1 of 4 responses. Number 1 is going to be the don't call me again, put me on do not call list. And if you run into this, you run into this. What can you do? You put them on the do not call list, you just move on. Again, this is a numbers game. Don't fret over each individual number that you dial. If they say, hey, I don't want to deal with this, don't call me, just don't call them. You got plenty of numbers ahead of you. That's 1 out of thousands. You might find someone who purchased a product and they're unhappy with it, or maybe they purchased a product and they are happy with it. And we bolded these 2 because these are where a lot of people mess up. With working age leads. They'll call folks who have already made a purchasing decision and assume that because they bought something, it's game over. We got to go on to the next lead. And you're leaving so much on the table. There's a lot you can do here. And the number 4 option, of course, is they just didn't buy anything. And there may be any number of reasons for that. And we'll talk about those in a bit. So let's talk about those 2 where the client might have purchased something, either they were happy or unhappy with it. And we'll start with them being unhappy. If they purchased something and they were unhappy with it, what we want to know is what they bought, what they wanted to buy, and why they are unhappy with what they got. And knowing what they bought and what they wanted, there's probably going to be a little bit of a gap between those 2 things that tells us why they're unhappy with it. Now, a lot of times, and you're calling age leads and they've purchased something, and 30 days later they're already unhappy with it, or 60 days later they're already unhappy with it, it's usually because they've gotten their first bill in the mail, or their first premium draft has hit their account or whatever. And all of a sudden they realize that this is way more money than they want to spend on some stupid life insurance that they don't even get to use unless they're dead. So they purchased it, and now the chickens have come home to roost a little bit, and they're unhappy with the decision. Now, sometimes this is just the nature of the beast. Maybe the agent they spoke with sold them the absolute perfect policy, and they just, it just is what it is, and this is just what it costs to have the perfect policy, and this is not something you're getting a lot for your money or whatever. But a lot of times you'll run into a situation where they were sold as a real-time lead. Agents that work real-time leads tend to want to close deals as quickly as possible because they know they've got a couple other agents that are working the same shared leads, and they want to give them the cheapest price and the quickest close so they can lock them in. I said cheapest price, but it's cheapest price in the quick close arena. That means the lowest cost non-med policy. And if you compare non-med policies to medically underwritten policies, even the lowest cost non-medical policies are more expensive than you'll find than their underwritten counterparts are, because underwriters who fully underwrite policies just flat out have more information, understand more fully the risk that their companies are taking on when they write those policies, and give you a lower premium as a result. Non-med policies, there's more mystery about them. Underwriters hedge their bets a little bit by jacking the premiums up. So if you talk to somebody who's purchased something and they're unhappy, and they're an aged lead, that's how you found them. A lot of times you'll find that it's that situation. They were slammed into a non-med policy that maybe they can afford it, maybe they can't afford it, but regardless, they could have qualified for a medically underwritten policy, and it might be way, way cheaper for them. It's not always the case. Maybe you'll find folks that were put into a great policy and they really don't need to change, or maybe they just need to drop the benefit a touch. Maybe they were put into something just completely just wrong. Like, they wanted to do a college savings policy or something for their grandkid, and they ended up buying a Primerica term policy. Who knows? Point is, they purchased something and unhappy. Well, we're doing a quality survey. We're sad to hear that this client is unhappy with their agent's experience, and we want to help them fix this. And the way we're going to help them fix this is first by establishing some trust. They've already bought a policy from some idiot over the phone, and 30 or 60 days later, they don't like it. They're unhappy with it. They're not going to be super keen on doing that again. They're not, I know this is cheesy and cliched, but they're not going to care how much you know about insurance until they know how much you care about them. So you've got to take the time on a call like this to really figure out why this person's unhappy, and really strip aside the political correctness here. Really what this means is you've got to let them bitch at you for a little bit. They're going to complain about what they've got. They're going to complain about the price. They're going to vent a little bit a lot of times in this situation. And that builds a little bit of camaraderie. Just sit there and, just commiserate with them, understand them, empathize with them. And then after you've gotten past that point in the conversation, show them some better options. And we'll see what we can do to help. Now, sometimes you're going to run into folks who have purchased something and they're happy with it, or they're neutral towards it. They don't really care, whatever. They've got the coverage and they don't really want to think about it anymore. That's fantastic. And this is where we want to touch back on the cross-selling stuff you mentioned earlier. The great response to something like this is, that's great. I'm really glad to hear that you're satisfied and that your agent took care of you. Before I let you go, did your agent mention cancer insurance, critical illness insurance, using your policy for living benefits? Whatever it is you've decided to cross-sell, it's just kind of that Columbo close thing. On the way out, you've got your hand on the doorknob, and oh, by the way, did your agent bring up whatever. This is why you want to have something else in your back pocket aside from your primary product. Age leads, like we said over and over, are just old real-time leads. If they've already bought something, chances are the agent that worked that real-time lead and sold them whatever they sold them got him into that policy and then needed to move on to the next, because he's working real-time leads. You can't sit around and just twiddle your thumbs and work with clients and do client service. You've got to get to the next one right away. Otherwise, some one of the other agents that bought that shared lead is going to close it first, and then you're wasting money. So you'll find a lot of opportunities to kind of plug holes with cross-selling stuff, especially if you're running into clients that are older and are Medicare eligible. There's obviously you can talk about MA stuff over the phone, but there's a lot of opportunities there to discuss, senior benefits, especially in a situation like that. If you run into somebody that just didn't purchase something, our goal is to figure out why they didn't make a purchase. And there could be any number of reasons for this. They could have been the price of the products they were shown were just across the board too high, and they felt like it couldn't fit in their budget. Well, maybe they weren't shown medically underwritten policies like we had discussed. You'll be surprised how often that's the case. I can't overemphasize enough how much lazy agents just want to sell non-med term products with e-apps and phone signatures and all that crap. They have their time and their place, but they're not right for everybody. And if you slam everybody into those types of policies, you are going to end up with clients who are paying more than they should for the benefits they have. And if someone who watches this webinar comes in behind you and shows your clients medically underwritten policies, they're not going to be your clients anymore. So, I'm not bashing non-med term policies. I've sold my fair share of them. Like I said, they have their time and their place, but they're not right for everything. So if you've got a healthy client on the phone and they say, I talked to a couple of agents, but all the prices were whatever. Well, let me run you a quote real quick. I'm an independent guy. I got access probably to the same carriers you've already gotten quotes on. I just want to see if I can do anything for you. And if I can, I'll let you go. Well, you said you were looking at you said you were looking at about $55 a month, but I'm looking at a policy here that's closer to 30 or whatever, and that's when you can get into a conversation about medical versus non-medical and that sort of thing. They may have just been frustrated with the process. Being a real-time lead is not a fun thing. I remember when I was first buying and evaluating real-time leads, I would put my contact information in on various lead generator sites, just to see who was generating for who and what language they're using and all that stuff. And your phone would blow up for months afterwards. Sometimes, but obviously it would trickle off quite a bit after the first 2 weeks. But those first 2 weeks especially were pretty frustrating. So both from phone calls and emails. So there's some frustration there, and it's easy to understand why a client might in that situation feel overwhelmed and decide that it's not a good time to make a purchasing decision. Your job in that situation is to remind them that the dust is settled, ask them what they need information-wise to feel comfortable, and then just, it's a low-pressure situation. You don't want them to be frustrated. You don't want them to feel slammed again. Try and make them feel comfortable. Try and educate them, and eventually you'll find folks that that they'll go with you just because of that approach. They may have felt like they had a lack of options, and this goes back again to a lot of folks that work real-time leads not wanting to show a lot beyond non-med term products. Maybe they really wanted to do something that had some decent cash value. Maybe they really wanted to take the time to plan out a UL or an IUL, and they couldn't find somebody that felt like was taking care of those needs for them. Those are golden opportunities. They don't come up as often as others, admittedly, but those are really great opportunities to win a client for life. And you might run into folks that they just didn't have it in their budget at the time that they were a real-time lead. They shopped around. They were kind of kicking tires. They thought, I need life insurance. I'm going to figure out what this costs, and then next payday, I'm going to buy this policy. So it's 3 weeks before payday, and they start shopping around, and they're a real-time lead, and all these agents that call the guy up, the first thing he says is, well, I'm shopping around. I'm thinking about 3 weeks from now, when I get paid, I'll probably buy a policy. And what does that sound like to these agents that are working real-time leads? It sounds like an immediate, I'm not going to buy anything. I'm just kicking the tires. This is covering myself from the beginning. I'm not going to buy something. And from that point, the guy 3 weeks later, his phone's not ringing anymore. Nobody's talking to him. At that point, he's kicked some tires. He's looked at a couple of options, maybe from an agent or two that said something to him, but the phone's not ringing anymore. He's ready to buy, but no one's around. So here you are buying these leads as an aged lead. You come in, you give him a call. A guy never made a purchasing decision, but is still interested, still ready to go. is a little bit more informed, you can take them the rest of the way there, show them a full suite of options, help them make a choice, and help them make a purchasing decision. It's a matter of taking the time to understand why your client didn't make that decision in the first place and trying to overcome whatever obstacle that was. In all three cases, whether they purchased something and were happy with it, whether they purchased something and were unhappy with it, or whether they didn't purchase something originally, you're going to go through and try to sell them something. You're going to talk about some kind of product. You're going to talk about something that they need. You're going to learn more about them. You're going to have a conversation with them. At the end of all of that, whether that all results in them buying a policy from you or not, ask for a referral. You have to ask for a referral. You just have to. And you're not going to get them just naturally. Trees will not begin sprouting them. They're only available if you ask for them. And if you call somebody and they bought something from another agent and they're happy with what they bought from that other agent and they're not even a little bit interested in buying something from you, ask for a referral anyway. Who cares? What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no, they're going to hang up. That was going to happen anyway. Just ask for a referral. Nobody asks for referrals. The other agent probably didn't. They bought something from that guy. He was probably wiping the sweat off his brow saying, "Whew, made that one. Thank goodness they filled out the application." He probably didn't ask for referrals. You asked for the referrals. And if they bought something and they were unhappy with it, and you came in and you fixed the problem, or even if you didn't fix that problem, you provided them with some valuable information, you provided them with someone to listen to, ask for a referral. If they didn't purchase something, talk to them about why. Talk to them about why not, whether they purchase something from you today or not, why they do or why they don't. And then, at the end of that conversation, even if they didn't purchase something, I understand that factor XYZ is keeping you from buying this today, and I understand, and I don't think I can overcome that. But do you know anybody else, or who else do you know that I could show this product to that might be in a different position? Because I think it's a valuable product, and I think they'd benefit from hearing about it. Ask for the referrals anyway. I promise you, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to hear no. If you're not okay with hearing no as an insurance agent, you're not going to be a very successful insurance agent. So just go on and get used to the no's. And when you hear the yeses, when you get those referrals, the value you get from them is going to make that irritation all very worthwhile. And remember, your leads age too. If you're only working age leads, that's fine. But a lot of us work other leads as well. Maybe you're buying real-time internet leads. Maybe you're working direct mail leads. Maybe you got some referrals from direct mail leads in the past. Whatever. Maybe you went to Kmart and you worked out in the parking lot. Like one of our guys did, Brian Frierson. We did a webinar about that. It was very interesting. The point is, if you're generating fresh leads, those leads are going to be aged leads one day too, 30 days later, 60 days later, 90 days later. Don't throw them out. One thing I used to do, and I should really get back to doing it now that I think about it, is every time the holidays would start to roll around, I'd go through my book of business and I'd call up folks and ask them for referrals, and they would, and I really, it wasn't really a serious ask. It was more of a hi, how you doing? How are the holidays? Just wanted to check in with you. Oh, by the way. And it was kind of a low pressure thing, but I also went through and called leads that I hadn't converted as well. Age leads that had never picked up the phone that were still within the contact window, real-time leads that I had purchased that, I hadn't been able to reach at the time or hadn't closed at the time. Reach out to those too. Just throw them in the dialer. Your leads 30 days from now are now your aged leads. Work them just like you would any other aged leads. Throw them in your CRM, like if you're using Radius or something, and throw them into a drip marketing campaign. This stuff is really valuable to you, even if it only results in you closing an extra couple of cases a year. That's just like picking up found money. If you've got this stuff thrown into a drip marketing campaign and they're just getting these automated emails, or you're throwing these old leads into a dialer once every couple of months and just running through them for a couple of days, this is just money sitting there in your own backyard waiting for you to pick it up. There's no reason not to do it. So that, in a nutshell, kind of, is how you work age leads, dialing for dollars, and volume is the key. We can't overstate that bit enough. So that'll wrap us up for the live presentation bit. Let's go on and open up a question and answer session. If anybody has any questions, we've got the question and answer feature on the Zoom control panel. Feel free to make use of that and ask anything you might like. We're going to go on and stop the recording as well.